Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming in.
Good morning. Pleasure.
We just heard from the police chief there, and yesterday in his remarks, he kind of downplayed it. It was a little different from what you said. He said that, we cannot say for certain that this is a trend that we are seeing. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it is a trend, and is there a disconnect there between the public perception and what the police chief came out and said yesterday?
No, I think, first of all, you can't deny the numbers. I mean, what's happening is happening. Secondly, I don't think he or I talk to him almost every day. You can't help but to be shocked by this when it happens. But our job also is to remain calm and to have a resolve, which I can assure you both he and I have, to do whatever we can to root out these gangsters and to get them rounded up and arrested, to stop the flow of guns, to help the kids, quite frankly, to make sure they take the right course in their life in some of the neighborhoods where, where there's more challenges in front of them. So I think it's one of those things where that's our job, is to provide leadership and so on. But I don't think there's anybody who isn't completely shocked and who doesn't find these trend lines, which are, they are what they are for this year. And that doesn't mean you accept them, but it just means they are what they are and you have to fight them.
It was 10 years ago. It was dubbed the summer of the gun here in the city. A lot of people are concerned that we are, 21 this year so far, that we are en route to having that happen once again in the city. I know that there are community issues that need to be resolved, but immediately, right now, what can be done?
Well, the police are going to do what they know best how to do, and I have confidence in the chief and in our men and women, and they're out there, as we saw last week, investigating constantly these gangs that are responsible for a lot of this. A lot of this is retaliatory activity with people targeting each other, and they're going to have to get at the root of that. Secondly, there are things we can do, and there's a myriad of ideas. I've talked about trying to stem the flow of illegal guns into Toronto. We've talked about a gun amnesty. There's a suggestion that we take liquor licenses away, which hopefully you could do fairly quickly from places that sort of harbor people known to use guns. There's more programs for these kids in these neighborhoods over this summer, like coming up right now. And so that's the whole point of what I was saying yesterday, and me getting people together to say, all hands on deck here. We are not going to accept the fact that this safe city, which is still safe in the vast majority of places at the vast majority of times compared to any big city in the world, we are not going to let that slip away. And it's a matter of everybody getting together to do everything they can.
We saw, the Yonge and Eglinton shooting happening in the middle of the day in Yonge and Eglinton area. We saw, a young man shot on a bicycle in the morning. We saw, Miss Bob, pregnant woman. Her baby just passed away in hospital. She was shot and killed. Do we have not only a guns problem in the city, but also a problem with gangs?
Definitely. And the police are on top of that. I mean, the whole series of raids that happened at the end of last week was targeted at one gang, of which there are several. And, there's a whole lot of things related to that. I mean, there's the whole notion that people are carrying guns in their pockets in greater numbers, that they're prepared to pull them out and use them when they have them. And those are related problems. The fact there are gangs that are sort of at war with each other over other kinds of criminal activity. And then there are sort of the questions that are much bigger. Why do people choose to join gangs in the first place? So all of these have to be addressed. I don't sit here as the mayor, the police chief doesn't, and say I've got a magic wand or a secret solution in my pocket, but you sure have to have the determination, which I do, to get everybody together, to do everything we can to make sure that this kind of violence is that we stem, this trend line that is you can't deny it.
You mentioned the raids last week. Heart of a King, that was the gang that was targeted. We saw some raids this morning on Lisgar Street, Queen and Ossington area. We've had some photos sent in to us from those raids. What can you tell us about that?
Not much. I mean, I don't direct the police at what they do, nor do they give me advance notice of their activities. But I can tell you that I know that our men and women, all of them, under the chief's direction, are constantly investigating these gangs. They're constantly, looking for ways in which they can bring people to justice who are involved in any of this, whether it's carrying guns or using guns or both, and I'm confident they're going to keep at this. And I'm just glad that people can see sometimes what is the sort of the outward activity of a lot of investigation that has to take place before you know who to go and execute a search warrant against. So they're very busy with this. I hope to be busy on the side that I can be busy on, programs for kids, stemming the tide of guns over the border, targeting kind of if there are liquor establishments or other things we can do to say you're not going to get away with having people with guns in your premises. And just really harnessing the whole, strength of the city and all the other governments to get at this and reduce it substantially.
The gun amnesty motion that was put forward by Councillor Mamalidi, why not put that into effect immediately? Yesterday that was referred to executive committee.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The police chief, first of all, is the one, that will make a decision about whether they're going to have a gun amnesty. They have, had some effectiveness in the past, but I think if we really want to do it properly, we have to do it differently, because in the past you got a limited number of guns for all the efforts you made. But the bottom line is we'll move as quickly as we can. We just did one a few months ago, and so if the chief is interested in doing it very quickly, then that's fine. Nobody's going to hold him up because of an executive committee meeting. I'd be quite happy to see him proceed with it tomorrow if that's his wish, in terms of how effectively it can be done, but that's a decision he ultimately has to make.
Okay, so that's on the police chief. Do you think that, bottom line here, we need more cops on the streets of Toronto?
I think that
Even in the interim.
I think if we're in a position, well, the answer is we need more police officers to be deployed in the neighborhoods, and the chief is already doing some of that. In some of the neighborhoods that have been prone to more of this kind of gun violence, there are extra officers in there today on bikes and on foot and so on, and it does make a difference in terms of both comforting the people and also more eyes to keep eyes on the bad guys. But I think in the end we have the police resources we have, and it's a matter of deploying them better. Fewer officers deployed, watching for people to make left turns illegally, and more officers deployed in neighborhoods dealing with these serious criminal matters that are confronting us.
I was in Rexdale last week where that young man was shot on the bike, and I was talking to residents there, and one mother came up to me who has, small children, and she said to me, I know that you talk to the mayor and to the police chief sometime. Will you tell them I am afraid to let my children out of the house? The school is across the street. What do you tell that mother? What do you tell residents in this city who are fearful that something will happen in broad daylight, which we have seen over the past couple of weeks?
I say to that mother and to all the people, those same mothers have spoken to me and said the same thing. It is not acceptable in Toronto in 2016 or any other time that people should be afraid to let their children out of the house to play. And so what we have to do is make those neighborhoods safer. They tell me, those same people, Travis, that a lot of the people that are doing the shooting in their neighborhoods are coming in from outside. They're coming in, for example, to buy drugs from people who live in some of that housing. We've got to find ways to evict, when it's Toronto community housing, those people out. And I've talked to the Premier about this. Get those people out of those neighborhoods. Put more police officers in those neighborhoods so that the bad guys are going to be not as likely to be sort of entering the neighborhood when they don't belong there in the first place. We've got to help by putting programs in place at that very same school you talked about in the summertime for those kids, so they're not lured into gangs and guns activity. We've got to stop the flow of guns into those neighborhoods, some of which come across the border. So these are all the things we're trying to do. There's going to be no easy way. I don't want to fool people into sort of just saying like that it's going to be gone. But I will say I have the determination, as the police chief does, as I think a lot of my colleagues do, to work hard together to make this something that we can substantially make a dent in.
Okay. Mayor John Tory, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to talk about this again soon.
Sure.